fighting for you and me. Patients need what the doctor has said. Safe access now to the meds they've read. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. The struggle is real, but so is the fire. For health and hope, we climb higher. Stand with the ones who can't stand alone. For every voice deserves a throne. Compassion leads where the laws resist. A healer's heart can't coexist with barriers blocking what we deserve. The people's needs must be preserved. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. Summer's voice, it carries the flame for justice. Chant her name again. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. For the people's care, we will sustain.
This production is brought to you by DHBN, WTHC Radio, and Stoner Records.
Hello. Welcome to WTHC Radio and our weekly Patients for Safe Access podcast. This is your Oklahomie, Summer Parker from Oklahoma, and today we are going to be talking with another fellow Oklahomie, and his name is Jed Green. And Jed is a guest on our show today because he has been part of the co-authoring State Question 837 for the state of Oklahoma, which is the adult use petition and initiative. So this was something that came through a couple of years back. At the time, it was State Question 820. And I will be honest and tell you that I voted no for adult use in the state of Oklahoma whenever I had the opportunity to do so before. And the reason that I did that is because I did not feel like that our medical program could handle adding adult use to that at the time. And I've got to say I'm still somewhat conflicted. So the man with the answers is here for your questions today. And so let's go ahead and bring Jed Green from ORCA, and he will tell us a little bit more. Hi, Jed.
Hi, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. How are you, sweetheart?
Good. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. I'm excited to have you on today. We have tons of questions for you. We're also going to have interactive questions from the audience. But first, I want to give you the chance to tell us a little bit about yourself and about ORCA and what you do.
Sure. Just really simply, I'm a guy that has been working with marijuana here in Oklahoma for over 35 years. And in the meantime, I've done a lot of construction work. And about 20 years ago, I started working with political campaigns. And so started getting involved in the political side of things here in Oklahoma. And over the last 20 years, run a bunch of campaigns. And in 2018, I had the honor of working as the director for the Yes on 788 PAC. And what my role was in that was that, getting out a bunch of experience, been dealing with this a long time, wanted to make sure that 788 got across the line. It's the first issue that had come I'd ever voted on I really gave a shit about. So anyway, what I basically did was there were folks that were wanting to, jumpstart an industry, obviously, and they had some dollars to work with. And then we had a bunch of awesome grassroots folks who authored 788 and got all the signatures to get us ballot access here, put it on the ballot. And so I kind of worked as the bridge, made sure that the grassroots got the resources they need to succeed. And, history was made. We won 57-43. So in that, since that time, we've had a couple of other passes at moving to adult use here in Oklahoma. We've also, obviously, as a lot of the folks outside looking in, you've seen a program that exploded and then went down. Obviously, we've seen that in other states and such, but it's got its own local flavor. So spent a lot of time at the Capitol working with the lawmakers and the agencies. Here in Oklahoma, we've got pretty good access to our lawmakers, unlike other states. So we, and I've got relationships going back 20 years, in that and dealing with that. So that's about 4 years ago, we started this group, ORCA, Oklahomans for Responsible Cannabis Action. And what we're here for is to ensure that we've got open access to consumer safe products across the state. And we want to do this with, the amount of regulation it takes, not what the state thinks it needs, and make sure that businesses have a good platform to work off of out of Oklahoma. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. I've got two girls, love them, they're hellacious teenagers, kind of like I was. So,
Uh-oh. The sense of our father produces our daughters.
Oh yeah. Well, see, I know better than my parents did, which is I know better than to fight back. We just monitor the situation. And if it gets a little bit too far, then the hand of God comes down, but otherwise let them run. Fuck it.
Right,
They're great
right.
kids. They're great kids.
Were you a part of 820? And 820, tell people kind of what 820 was.
Okay, so yeah, this might be interesting for folks. So here's what 820 looked like a few years back. I think what it was 2021, 2022. So we had worked to author 2 amendments to our Constitution, State Question 818 and State Question 819. And those were what we worked on as a local, community and industry, and came up with those offerings. We filed them. In the meantime, there were some folks that I have known for a long time here in Oklahoma that were backed up by MPP and New Approach, some of the folks that had done set up a lot of folks programs nationally. And so anyway, we'd reached out to them, and those folks wouldn't talk to us for a year. We filed our deal, and then they came in and filed a statutory over the top that didn't protect our individual rights. It did work to do some good things, but for us, the ultimate Trojan horse was the business licensing. We're looking at how do we get consumer safe products to the market? How do we do that efficiently? And what it did was it ran a bifurcated system like we've seen in other states, where you'd have a medical license and then you'd have a recreational license. Well, we're just not interested in that. And what we've proposed, and what we were proposing again with 837, is that a marijuana license is a marijuana license. You can sell either way through the chain, can sell to either side. So
Right.
what that does is it prevents a lot of, disruptive things we've seen, a lot of hard choices by business that, do you grow for this side or do you grow for that side? In my world, the weed's the weed. Marijuana is marijuana. Cannabis is cannabis. The difference between, say, medical and recreational use is simple. It's the intent of the consumer. Are you taking this to get sleep, for stress, for, working on your cancer, other things that marijuana is great for treating? Or are you just, going to go out and hit the farm pond and blow one while you're fishing?
Right.
That's it. But the products, they remain the same. They either have a medical benefit or they don't, but then they're consumed otherwise. So, the way we oppose State Question 820 from its filing, to fast forward. And so the folks that worked on 788 also just generally, like you, Summer, opposed it. And we opposed it because we knew that, given how far behind and the mess with our regulatory 2-master system is, we knew that we could pass this, but there would be a select few individuals around the state who are politically well connected enough that they would have got their licenses, but other folks wouldn't.
Right.
So it was a Trojan horse is what we called it. So whereas we won like 32 counties out of 77 with 788, we managed to defeat 820 in all 77 counties. So we're back, and that's what 837 is about.
Okay. So let's see. We have one question here already. It says, what is State Question 837 all about in your own words?
Number one, it's freedoms. It's individual rights and freedoms. In the very first section, we immediately lock into our Constitution patient rights, which are only statutory here in Oklahoma and subject to lawmakers taking away at any point in time. They already try. We already fight back. This should not even be a question. So Section 1, protect patients. Section 2, first subsection, make sure that all current MMJ patients enjoy all the rights that we lock into this. So the first thing we do is we protect patients and then everyone's rights. And that's a big bulk of what we've got going on here. We deal with impairment testing. We prohibit metabolite testing to determine impairment, which obviously is a big deal with DUI and such. No more, getting metabolites pulled and, you get a DUI for a joint you smoked 3 weeks ago, right? That's over.
Right.
DHS, we're of the opinion that breaking kids up from their families because someone smokes weed is more detrimental to the child than the weed is. So, we make sure that those family protections, parental rights, Oklahoma, obviously Second Amendment, we protect those rights as well. So that's a good majority of what it is. And then we've got a couple of pages in there that handle implementation. And what that does is we implement in 60 days. And what that looks like is simply that all licenses are considered dual licenses by the state, just a marijuana license, and that there's no additional licensing required. There is no additional inventory tracking required. We don't need to try to bifurcate that and create that headache for everyone. So the difference is at the point of sale. At the cash register, we remove the 7% excise tax on medical marijuana sales. Right now, Oklahoma's got the third highest effective tax rate on medical marijuana. So we're cutting that in half by removing the 7% excise tax. And then we place a 10% excise tax on adult use sales. And that's basically it. And so from there, lawmakers are granted enough authority to be able to continue to regulate the business side of things. And that's kind of the gist of it. I mean, there's a lot more to it, but I think, your questions will probably pull all that out.
Right. All right. So
I'll
let
stop.
me ask you, would the flower transactions, would the deliveries and all that stuff be handled through metric like the medical side is?
Okay. Which transactions again? I'm sorry, Summer.
So would the recreational transactions, be handled through metric like the medical ones are?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Everything's going through metric. There's no stopping that. That's something that lawmakers can still do. They're looking at that type of stuff, but it's just there's no additional work that has to be done. And if the inventory doesn't move, then there's no place for it to get lost, go out the back door, anything like that, right? It's all there. The difference is just the tax rate you get charged.
Will they be required to have a full panel test on all products sold in the dispensary?
Yep, absolutely. Just like they do right now. All of those requirements are still in place.
Right. And currently we test for like microbials, heavy metals, pesticides. I'm trying to think of all the other categories currently, potency. So like, we're actually going to probably touch on that after the 420 break. So he's asking about the hemp products because we have a lot of questions about that too. But if there were to be changes that you wanted to make to the current rec petition, the way the language is, how long and what would the process look like to do? I guess would it be an amendment? That's just a question on timelines.
Okay, so if one wanted to amend the language that is proposed right now after it passed, what would that look like?
Well, like if like currently the version that's out there, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
if there to be edits or modifications to that version as it went forward, how long do you have to make those edits and modifications?
Well, the language that is out there now was filed with the Secretary of State on March 31st. And so there's no amending it as it is. What we would have to do is we would have to refile another version.
Okay.
And then that would reset the time clock.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. Let's see.
Step Big Studio. Hello, my name is Rich Regal, and we just legalized marijuana in the great state of Ohio. And I figured, why not write a song to that beautiful plant? I'm looking for the light, just wanna get high, so high. And my mouth is so damn dry, 'cause I'm high as the sky, so high. And I'm looking for the light, just wanna get high, so high. I'm high. Grab the papers in a bong, it don't matter what you're smoking on, just keep it rolling like we Cheech and Chong. We just sit back, light one up and pass it all around. All Zaza in my roll up, yeah, we ain't never smoking brown. Pack of gummies in my mouth, I ain't never coming down. Trying to get so damn high that I can never touch the ground. And we do it like this, no seeds, no sticks. Boogie over there, lighting up another damn spliff. So I grab it on up and put it to my lips like this. I'm looking for the light, just wanna get high, so high. And my mouth is so damn dry, 'cause I'm high as the sky, so high. And I'm looking for the light, just wanna get high, so high. I'm high.
Hello. All right, we are back. Sorry about that. So it goes to break at 4:20 Eastern, 3:20 Central. So
Yeah.
welcome back. Welcome
All
back.
good. All good. I enjoyed the jam.
Right. So okay, what were we talking about right there before break? I can't remember. That's okay. We'll move on to some other. Oh. All right, hang on. I remember the question I was asking him though. So the question I was asking you says, how does the ORCA petition differ from other cannabis reform efforts in Oklahoma?
Well, it's very concise. It locks in individual rights and freedoms, and sets simply implements the sales within about 60 days.
Okay.
That's what makes
So
it different. It's the others, State Question 820 specifically would have created an entire duplicate system. So we're avoiding that train wreck.
gotcha.
We don't want any disruption in supply.
Charles, what was your question right there?
In the hemp sector, having the bill that Department of Agriculture and ODAF would regulate it like they do currently, and just only be for sale in dispensaries where it's untested, untrackable, traceable product right now.
His question is that there's information language in the bill that ODAF and Department of Ag would be the ones responsible for regulating the recreational side. Is that correct?
On hemp.
Or on hemp, I'm sorry.
So the way that's set up is that the Department of Agriculture here in Oklahoma, under their USDA approved hemp plan, they regulate hemp to the point of certifying it certifying it at harvest. From there, ODAF doesn't do anything to regulate the hemp or hemp derivatives, how it's sold, where it's sold, anything like that. And so that's where they would stay, is at the production. Now, what this SQ 837 does do is it makes plain what is already unenforced state law, and that is that all THC sales occur in a licensed marijuana dispensary.
So all like Delta 8, Delta 10, THCA, VOP, etc., right?
Yeah, anything that is THC would have to be sold in a licensed dispensary, which means that it all has to have full panel testing for what it is, just like all other products. So the same consumer safety testing requirements would be on those products as well.
So is there space in this bill and language that changes the current legislation that makes it where the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority is not able to regulate Delta 8 and Delta 10 inside of the dispensaries?
This would basically override that.
And give them
the prohibition in law of Delta 8 and Delta 10 not being enforced by OMMA in the dispensaries. This would override that. Once this passed, they would be forced to remove that from state law.
Okay. So let's see here. Kai, the science guy, he's asking, will there be any changes to patient card fees?
The big change to patient card fees is that if you're a veteran of any branch of the United States military, that you will not pay a fee to the state for a medical marijuana card.
And now, is that based off of a disability rating or just?
Just flat.
Okay.
Yeah, just flat. If you've been enlisted, then you don't get charged for a fee from the state for an MMJ card.
Now, one of the things that we had discussed, especially at our Veterans Roundtable meeting last year in November, was that currently, in order to get a discount through the regulatory agency on the patient card, it states that you have to be a 100% disabled through the military, right? And our idea on that was to advocate for anyone that has a DD 214. And the reason why we chose to advocate it that way was that there are often civilian contractors who are with the military services for over a year's time, who then at that point receive a VA identification on their state IDs that maybe weren't actually, enlisted and or active. And so the fact of having that DD 214 was kind of where we felt like would give the appropriate persons that were needing that discount. What do you think?
So one of the things that we have here is we've got constitutional language. So if it's voted into being by the people of Oklahoma, it isn't changed except for by our vote. And so, like you indicated, the form that you indicated, Okay. If we specify it by number, what if that changes? It's a
What do you
problem.
mean?
Like if the federal government designates a new form or a new application than the one you're referring to. Does that make sense?
It does, but the DD 214 is the form that all military personnel receive
I
upon
no, I get it. I get exactly what you're saying, but there is a certain place where you have to stop. Now, one thing to keep in mind, and this is where when we talk about amendments, this is framework, and we know that there is going to be legislative effort after this. Okay. So for example, this would need to be, what we have in there would need to be translated into law that would replace and give those protections. And that's where you'll see that additional, when that is being written after the session after this passes, then at that point in time is going to be the place where, they're going to be looking to say, okay, how exactly do we designate this? How do we tell the authority who qualifies? And so we say, hey, go off of this. It's in law. Therefore, if that for some random reason does get changed by the federal government 5 years from now or whatever, a new form is created, then we can go back in law and we can take care of that. Is that that's so anything that we're looking at, and I know there are things that will need to be done, and that's why we left that flexibility. So that's what we want to look at. Anything that it's kind of like this summer as we're going along, getting a document up that is a forward looking document that says, okay, let's imagine that this becomes law 18 months from now. Here's what we want to look at. And we know that those talks are going to happen. Should we be successful? Right. So it's have all your notes, have your proposed language ready. And then at the right time, boop, you've got it in the can. That's what my advice would be to everyone, that's got, sees things that they want to, make sure that the details are more filled out correctly.
Yeah. All right. So let's see here. We have another question here. WTHC Radio says that veterans should get their weed for free, and I 1,000% agree. We do work with that, Project 22 program, but is there anything legislatively or that can be changed to provide our veterans a discount every day on their medicine?
Well, I mean, that's it. When we go through and we zero out the excise tax, when we make their no state fee for veterans, we've eliminated almost all costs there outside of what they're, paying a private entity for. Right. So we would have to basically work to come up with some sort of like a voucher system with lawmakers that, I'm thinking it out loud here, right? But that's what that would look like. We're doing the max that we can within what we have, but it would literally come down to some way of giving a tax credit or rebate to the veterans based on their receipts for purchasing. And at the end of the day, I can tell you this, we as a people working to achieve that worthy goal, the return on investment for us just to do like what's being done with the 22 program out there, what Rob and them are doing, that is the way to do it. It's like, that's where it's like, how about the industry step up a little bit? Right. And folks that are doing that. In other words, instead of us having to go and, get law, go through a multi-year process, or we can, but you're putting a legislative mandate on businesses, them being honorable and volunteering is probably encouraging. That is kind of where we ought to continue doing that. We're doing it now. Some folks are. We ought to expand on that. Oklahoma. Let's do it.
Yeah, WTHC Radio says that in Pennsylvania, veterans get 20% off every time. So that would be awesome to be able to find something that we could do as a community and industry standard across the board.
You know what we could,
I think
there is one, there is, okay, so you got me thinking about it. There is something that they could do in statute as well,
Mhm.
is they could kill state, they could kill the state sales tax on it, drop it another 4%. And if they were going to be real nice, they could, kill state and local sales tax on it and drop it down to a true zero. So that, I mean, that's like a 8% discount right there. And that'd
Mhm.
be the easiest way to push that into law here
Yeah.
over a couple of few years.
All right, let's see. So can you tell me, in your personal opinion, do you feel like that the current medical program is broken?
I think in some as a whole, as a whole, we've got a lot of issues,
Mm-hmm.
and what those issues. See, the problem that we've got here, and I've seen that other states are having this issue as well. Number one, our state agencies, their actual goal is to eliminate as many of us as possible. That's the
Right.
actual goal here. Okay. We've got receipts on all this. So that's their
Mm-hmm.
goal. So it takes a long time for them to do their job, and they don't do their job. OMA has a statutory requirement to either approve, reject, or deny your license within 90 days. You'll be hanging out there you'll be hanging out there for a year, haven't even heard from them. So it is.
I've been hanging out for almost 2 years.
Right. And I mean, and we're not talking about a couple of isolated cases. We're talking about every
Mm-mm.
damn body has got
Hundreds.
these problems. And then after you get done dealing with them, then you got to go through the whole same thing with
Oh,
OBN. So we've
yep.
got so we've got that two master system. And so that really is something that so that broken right there, right? So when that's broken and they can't even get that right, how do we expect they're going to have their act together enough to actually get their lab together, like going on 4 years later? You see what I'm saying? Or
I do.
fumbling what that's going to look like on a rollout that'll actually bottleneck and seize everyone up. I mean, it's a shit show, right? So, one of the things that we do in 837 is that over the course of 3 years, we navigate business licensing and registration to one agency. Lawmakers can pick which one they want, but at the end of the day, but they're also then able to designate a separate agency to handle patient cards, caregiver licenses, education, and research licenses. If you're a medical marijuana
Mm-hmm.
authority, deal with the medical marijuana aspect of it, focus, and please get it right, hopefully at some point. Okay. In the meantime, the two master system they ran up license fees from what they originally were 20,000% in some cases.
Mm-hmm.
So this is wholly unacceptable. They did a number of these changes over the last 7 years in violation of our state constitution. We've had them in court over this over the last year and a half, fighting the whole damn state apparatus at once, all three branches. And so what we're doing here is taking the opportunity to set, the very basic foundations of this in a manner that will streamline them back about where they need to be. It'll provide for plenty of law enforcement. It may get them, they quit screwing around and wasting time and our tax dollars on bullshit and persecuting us, then they can really get more focused in on that consumer safety. I mean, we're going to set it up to be as easy as possible for them.
Right.
And then like we have been the last 5-6 years, summer again, that goes where, I'm going to have a whole section top to bottom of statutory suggestions the day one this is passed. Okay,
Right.
guys, maybe. And what's crazy is, remember, after we passed State Question 788, they had said they were going into special session. We
Mm-hmm.
got a whole ass 200 pages of law together for them. Then they bailed on us, didn't do that, and just let this thing go.
Yeah.
what happened in Oklahoma is not our state question. It's their failure to act. And boy, it bit them in the ass. Now, at the end of the day, it was pretty cool until the corruption kicked in, and that's a whole nother story.
Right?
But yeah. Anyway, that's the point.
Let's
It's broken, but that's what we're doing, is trying to fix it.
Well, and I appreciate you being, honest about, acknowledging that there's a lot of things broken in the current system. Because, I mean, I have concerns about, what, just like I did when Rec came through before. I have some of the very same concerns this time as I did last time. And, I've been to Arizona as a recreational patient, and they had a percentage cap and stuff. Example, you could go in and buy edibles, but you could only purchase up to 100 milligrams per day, right? You could come in and you could buy flour, but there was a THC percentage cap even on their flour, I believe. And so when you walked in the door, like one side of the location was for the recreational buyer and the other side of the location was for the medicinal buyer. And you didn't have stuff like RSO and FICO on the rec side. That was a medical need, medical patient need, right? So I guess I would be curious to see, are we going to see any type of provisions in play that like set things up that way? Or is the rec patient just going to have access to everything the medical patient has?
That is fundamentally what's going to happen, is that as at the start, and remember the constitutional nature here of this. So at the start, the baseline is to implement seamlessly, is that it's, open shop, medical card, or state ID, either way. Okay. Now, one of the reasons, and this is why we believe it's best that we do this as opposed to leave it up to lawmakers. Well, they're not going to do it. Much less our issues with out-of-state offerings. The big concern is, what happens to all of a sudden the products disappear? Does access to products disappear? It's kind of which you see that. Now, I want to share a couple perspectives on that. Number one, remember, Oklahoma open access to a medical card. We've had up to like 380,000 licenses out at one time. We know that everyone's got a friend, if you know Oklahoma, right? So here's the thing. With that level of access, we've been running like 7 years now, and folks have plenty of access. So it's not like, let's say that we were in a state where there were limiting medical conditions and only a certain percentage could get access. When you open up the rec side, then all of a sudden it does create a demand. And when they've capped the amount of supply, be it by canopy limits, license sizes, they're not, those programs weren't in the same position because, in other words, we already have a saturated market with pretty open access, So I think that what we'd see naturally is that businesses, especially those that are inclined to service the medical side of it, and that there are a lot of them, that they will designate. They will say, okay, here are the products that are geared, specifically to patient needs, like RSO. Now, if we're seeing something, again, lawmakers, can still put limits and manipulate those things down the road, but we'd have to take a hard look at what that is.
Right. It's almost. Well, so who's going to be regulating the recreational market? Will it be the OMMA, ODAF, Department of Ag?
It would, well, out front, it's going to be OMMA and OBN as it is right now, but over 3 years, likely what happens is that OBN handles business licensing and therefore regulation of what the businesses do, and OMMA handles patient, caregiver, and then education and research initiatives, those licenses.
But to begin with, we're going to be relying on the current agency to regulate that industry as well, right?
That's right. We have to, in order to prevent a big disruption in the market and therefore, trickling down to individual access, we can't just do an abrupt, as of this day, OMA no longer exists.
Right?
As much as I would like to,
Right?
we have to keep it inside of Responsible Cannabis Action. I mean, Summer, sitting over here, do what I do year in, year out for ORCA the last 4 years. I've heard it from, I've been out there front line at the Capitol hammering these guys. We even fight in the elections around here, and we've been whooping on them some. So, yeah, it's a good time, guys.
He has just concerns about, the OMMA's lack of ability to currently regulate the medical marijuana industry in regards to protecting the patient. Speaking of things like pesticides, heavy metals, that type of a deal. And so, the concern there is, they went through and they did their budget request, and they get like $27 million a year in, personnel and staffing. And how much more are they going to end up needing to be able to fund an agency that can handle not only the medical marijuana industry but the recreational cannabis as well?
Well, here's the thing: they're not given any more work to have to regulate. Fundamentally, let's look at that again. With there being no difference in the inventory, it's already sitting there. The only thing that happens here initially is at the cash register, who can buy the product,
And what percent?
This makes it right. That's it. There is literally no more work for OMMA to actually have to do.
Okay, let's see. With the passage of time, the current medical marijuana program, OMA, has evolved into a broken agency without a state quality assurance lab open to date, no ability to do a proper recall, no transparency or accountability. So those are comments from one patient's concerns about the rec program and the OMMA.
Well, the thing is that we can't make OMA function. Lord knows that we've been trying and been involved in that for the last 4 years. Okay. I mean, I'm speaking from direct experience. This state question is written from a mass community and industry experience. We can't make them do it. But again, that's why it's so important that we don't give them new work. What if we said to OMA right now, hey, figure out a side recreational program? It wouldn't happen. That's why we opposed 820, because that's what it did. You know what I'm saying? Like, the OMA literally doesn't have to do anything but continue to try, and so we don't create any more work for them, and it's just done at the cash register.
Gotcha.
I don't know how, and that, again, that's one of the things that we'd seen a lot of other states do, the multi-agency or, and it doesn't look like it worked real well. So we're just saying these folks can buy these same products. OMA, OBN, would you guys actually please get on the ball about consumer safety around here?
So speaking of like consumer safety, and like, let's talk about the medical benefits, of the plant. And is there a spot in this language, and or do you see in the future coming any money being allocated for research of medical benefits, instead of like how they did their study of how much marijuana was too much marijuana grown in our state, which will take us into the link for conversation in just a second. But do you see them putting any money aside and any effort into research into the benefits of?
I think that if we make that OMMA's sole focus, again, patients, caregivers, and then research and education. We've got multiple people that have asked to pull one of those licenses that they're not granting them to.
The research
So
license.
research licenses, and they're dragging their feet. They're not giving them out. It's political, and so if that's part of their only purpose, then they're going to have to start doing some of that. You know what I'm saying? And if they continue to drag their feet and they're continuing to fail on that, a couple of years from now, we get this into place, then it's real simple. We'll figure out ways to do it from a nonprofit angle. I mean, there's going to be a way to do it. You know what I'm saying? Like, hopefully they'll step up and get it together. Otherwise, it's kind of like this. The industry and patients are going to have to work with NGOs in order to get this done.
What was that question?
There is a way to do it.
But we have a moratorium.
Oh, the moratorium.
For taking licenses away at record pace.
So he's bringing up the current moratorium that's in effect and the fact that the regulatory agencies involved, meaning OMMA and OBNDD, have been taking away licenses at record numbers. And do you foresee the moratorium being lifted if the recreational is passed?
Well, if we pass 837, then what happens is 3 years from the date of passage, they are required to begin taking a limited number of new business applications. And when I say limited, I mean they can limit it down to one of each license type per individual or beneficial owner, right? So I could apply for dispo, processor, grower, all of them, right? But I could only get one of each.
Okay.
If we were so inclined to do it, right? But what we do is we're not doing that for 3 years because, again, it speaks to those shared concerns on 820. Are we ready for this? Is this calmed down enough? How about we not, we've got enough existing. We're not going to allow Big Pharma to close the loop down here and turn this into their model over 10 years. You see what I'm saying? We're going to lock in that this system is where their licenses are going to be available. Free market can take care of it from there, right? So, but we're also not going to flood this place out within the first 3 years. And then we require the legislature to have an enrollment period, kind of like you do with your OBN registration already, like folks do. You've got your annual renewal window with OBN. So between these 2-month time period, now it's January or July to September, and then they put a buffer on the back, but there's a set period where you renew or you apply. And so that actually streamlines a lot for the businesses there.
So can you foresee, I know currently in the paperwork, there's not anything in there like limiting milligrams or THC or anything like that. But do you feel like that's something that other states have done right by doing that, or that maybe we should have investigated further to do as well?
Here, I've got some concerns. We've seen some bills that look to do that in the past, and we immediately hit them and moved to kill them. Here's why: they didn't factor things like RSO for cancer patients. When they started doing that, there's no way you can get the RSO up where you need it. Also, like a lot of places in the country, we've got a lot of opioid problems here in Oklahoma. And if you're going to substitute an opioid addiction with marijuana, you're probably going to need some pretty high dose THC in order to do that. So we're not trying to cut off patient access in some of the most critical phases: cancer, opioid addiction, things like that, right? The other aspect of it is this: let's say that I can only put so many milligrams per gummy. Is the consumer just not going to eat more gummies to get the milligrams?
No, it's just like whenever I was in Arizona, I was restricted to the 100 milligrams per day purchase. And so, if I needed more than that 100, then I was, I didn't have it. But if I was good with that, then that package sustained me for the day or for 2-3 days.
Yeah, again, this is and maybe it's just us and we're a little backwards down here, but
But I have a medical need, and I consume 50 to 100 milligrams of edibles a day anyway. So
right.
it was just, recreational because I didn't have a card. That was the max I could get.
I see. See how complicated that shit is? I mean, how about you just walk in and you got access to everything that's on the shelf,
Yeah, but I
whether you're a
disagree
medical
with like
card
a
or you're
20-year-old.
recreational,
I
you know?
disagree with a 21-year-old college student coming in and buying 10,000 milligrams of, edibles in one package, like jacked up.
Well, it's kind of like this. It's probably safer. It's probably safer than them being able to walk in and buy a bottle of Everclear. There's no limits on alcohol, and that's the shit that's killing people. I mean, at a certain point, at a certain point, you can tell people not to do something, but it ain't going to stop them. If they're hell
No,
bent on getting 10,000 milligrams, I mean, I can see your point where it's like maybe not be like as convenient, but you see, I guess my perspective is just like there's way worse out there, and if they're doing that, I'd rather them do that than go pick up a bottle.
I can see that. I disagree with alcohol in regards to our youth as well. But I was a youth at 1.2, and I drank and did stupid shit myself. So
Yeah,
you
yeah.
um,
No, I mean it is what it is. It's set at 21. That's what alcohol is now. So I mean
yeah.
at some point you got to hope the folks learn. I mean, I hope they get a hold of a bottle of MD 2020 when they're about 15 and take that to their head. They'll be thinking twice about alcohol again moving forward.
Hippie, there was a question up there that Heather had up there. Could you find that one for me? And Lori's says, oh, hang on, let's go to Heather first. All right, it says, Jed, will 837 require all Delta products, including CBD, to follow the same testing, licensing, and other laws that are already in place for THC, mainly asking about CBD?
Okay, so CBD specifically, no. And the reason is where it is at on the federal schedule, which is off the schedule. Okay, so that is something, CBD is something that obviously the FDA took 5 years to look at what they needed to do. And then they said, well, we need Congress to do something. So maybe that happens in the farm bill if they get that done this year, along with where they likely will do something to rein in THC sales in that farm bill. So we're not touching CBD because there's already federal allowance for it. So tough for us to require someone to have a THC license if you're not required to have one federally.
All right. So speaking of a license, let's see. This one actually says the multiple agency model aligns more with other states. Would that be correct?
Yes, it does, and that's what we're trying to avoid.
Okay. And then Lori's says, so what will be the point in getting a medical card going forward?
Getting a medical card going forward, what it will do is, especially if you're a veteran or on assistance, then you're looking at $0 to $20 for a medical card. The tax rate will be 10% less on MMJ, and so therefore, you'll be money ahead by keeping a medical card.
Kai, the science guy, says, how does 837 prepare Oklahoma to become a key logistical powerhouse post-federal legalization?
Well, what we do address federal contingencies, and that is basically if in any form, congressional act, executive order, judicial review, it is declared that interstate commerce is okay, then as far as Oklahoma is concerned, we're open for business. We do set a 3% export tax on those products that are exported out of state. It's simply that none of the other taxes apply. One of the reasons for doing that is that we know that if we don't, lawmakers will. So we decided to go ahead and set something that works back with what we're doing with the licensing, which is to hopefully have, as far as our licensing cost, regulatory structure, et cetera, in Oklahoma, if we can have the most streamlined model for doing that, then, hopefully that where we're at logistically, cheap power, cheap labor per se, compared to other states, low cost of living, our folks that are based here should be ready to compete and for market share.
Okay, Lori says a whopping 10%, shake my head, big whoop. And she also had a couple of other comments that were up there as well. One was about paraplegic, and then this one says, no one is going to buy a medical card then if everyone can buy the same products. So that is kind of where I was lining up as well.
Oh, okay. And I mean, we've seen that again, the observations here, the observation here is based on a system on systems that were established very differently than what we're doing here. No other state passed a medical program with no limiting conditions. No one did that. We did that. And so we immediately developed our market to near maturity within 2 years in a medical program, right? So now we have a situation where we want to handle this. There's a 10% difference, okay? It is pure speculation by anyone, myself included, as to what that number of medical cards is going to be after we implement recreational. Anyone that says, that they know exactly what's going to happen is, probably a little off. Now, I would expect the number to decline, but how much is what really remains to be seen.
Well, I know that currently we have somewhere around 350,000 patient card holders in the state of Oklahoma. Senator Lankford this last week, he issued out a press release about the numbers in Oklahoma, and I think he must have been smoking one himself because
he was on one. Yeah.
We know that the report that he was referencing to in that news press release, he was talking about how Oklahoma currently grows 32 times what is needed to supply the demand for Oklahoma medical patient card holders, right? And that study was done Jed, 2 years ago?
Yeah, it was so bad.
From it, there was no new study done, there was no new numbers thrown out. The numbers that were put out there were, well, Colorado has this many dispensaries, you have this much percentage more than Colorado per capita, which Colorado has 6 million people, Oklahoma has 4. We do have a lot of dispensaries, we do have a lot of grows, but we are not at a 32 times supply. You know what I mean?
No, we're absolutely not. So to that, also on the Colorado comparable stats, Oklahoma has twice as many cities and towns as Colorado does.
Correct. Yes.
Twice as many places to put a dispensary. We're just a big old flat land. It's not like, I mean, go build them on the side of the mountain. Sure.
Yeah,
okay.
Trying to build on the side of
right.
the
Right. So, I mean, while they're sitting here trying to, now let's go into their deal on oversupply. Okay, guys, this is so bad. So originally OMA does a supply and demand study and tries to walk out the door saying we're 64 times over what we need. They then come in and immediately cut that back 2 years ago. They said, no, it's 32 times. And I say, okay, so we look at the report. And it's all kind of off. So they just doubled down on this with Senator Lankford and the Texoma HIDTA and OBN. They even brought DOC. Why the hell did they bring DOC in there? What do they even have to do with this, Summer? It's so dumb. So anyway, here's the gist of it, guys. What they did was they basically came in and they based what they considered oversupply off of wet weight. Right? Like the whole plant, that was the final weight. No drying, no removing stalk, stem, fan leaves, you know, getting those numbers way down. And then they did not, guys, this is hilarious. This is hilarious. They decided that in their, you know, their knowledge of cannabis, that all of our extracts come from the stalk, stems, and fan leaves of the plant. Apparently that's where they think stalk, stems, and fan leaves accounted for the entire concentrate market in Oklahoma. I mean, yeah, this is on its face absurd. So you take this, all of a sudden you're, when you run real numbers right now, as far as what is, okay, here's where we're really at in Oklahoma. Okay. With what is reported in metric. Okay. With what is reported in metric, we are basically right around 1.5 of what our listed patient demand would be if your daily allotment was 1/4 gram of flour, 0.04 grams of concentrate by their study. Okay. We're not at an oversupply in Oklahoma. We're at an undersupply, and it's being filled in by the gas stations and internet with folks, you know, pushing THCA and synthetics in here. That's the reality of it. And we've got the math to prove it. And we're going to press conference on that shit in the next week or so. Bet.
Bring that shit out. All right.
Well, I already busted. Summer, did you catch that deal where I was on a Channel 5 last week on responding to Langford?
Yes.
Oh, it was hilarious. We went Old Testament on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, good stuff. It's not over.
Hippie, will you bring up the different comments and questions that Heather has had? She's had several great ones that I've seen come up in there. So are you good to go over for a minute, Jed?
Yeah, I'm cool. I'm chilling.
Bet. All right. So this first one says, lots of comparing us to Colorado. I keep saying, who gives a dang what the other states are doing? Get them out of our state politicians' pockets so that Oklahoma can really get out of the mud in all things, starting with cannabis.
Yeah, amen. Well, starting with cannabis, we are on it. I agree completely, Heather.
Next one says, by Puff Pro Inc., says, would card holders maybe be able to grow more plants? So would you be able to increase that?
Well, so what we did was we left it the same plant count, which is 6 and 6. It's a total of 12. But what we did was we just made it a flat 12 plants instead of 6 mature, 6 immature. Okay. The state has they don't know what the hell they're talking about there, you know, so we just made it 12 plants. And yeah, the 12 plants is what you can do. And then you can keep everything that you get out of it. So I'm a home grower. I'll be growing as a matter of fact, I got seeds popping now.
Okay, so let me ask you a quick question on the home grow side of things. So if I myself, say I live in an apartment and I don't have the capacity to grow inside of my apartment for my medical card, right? Am I able to have someone else grow for me? And how does that work?
Well, you are not prohibited from doing it, so you can do it. Until the lawmakers, you know, attempt to, you know, until the lawmakers, you know, decide to throw some conditions on it.
Because, like, example, if I wanted you to grow for me, right? Couldn't I just give you like a copy of my patient card? And would I have to have you as my caretaker on my license so that you could caretake grow for me?
Yeah, no, I mean, you can do that right now as a patient. So you could, you know, you can do that right now as a patient. So, you know, just so folks are clear on that. But yeah, we lock in a constitutional right to do that. You see, that's one of the things that we have also been, you know, things under list of things that we hold back at the Capitol. Home grow rights is one of them. And I will feel much better if that right to home grow is in the Constitution personally. So yeah, we want to make sure folks can keep doing that.
What was that other one, Hippie, that Heather had up there just now? All right, it says paid for by lobbyists from Colorado and Missouri so their states don't take hits from us being recreational. Langford needs to be voted out. It is time we drain the swamp in Oklahoma too. Oh, honey, Drain that shit. Pull the plug. Get them out.
We got 5 of them last year.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
the folks that put the increased license fees on us and changed what we did by a vote of the people. Yeah, 2 down.
So I went
2
to
down.
DC last year in September, and was there for a day of advocacy and a day of lobbying with the Americans for Safe Access organization. And I had set up a meeting in advance with Mullen himself, not a staffer, but with him. We went a day early, spent $200 and something extra to be there a day early for flight and lodging. We get there to the meeting, and there's another group of advocates there from a preschool program in the state of Oklahoma. And they were scheduled to have their meeting at the same time that we were scheduled to have ours, again, with him directly. And he always tells you guys online and stuff, you know, if an Oklahoman makes the effort to come all the way to DC to come see him, then by golly, he's going to make time for them. Well, he lied. He didn't make time for us. He canceled that meeting and waited until we were there on site in his office for them to tell us and the other advocacy group that our meeting had been postponed because he had to go vote. Now, not that it was put off for half an hour. We could meet with him after the vote. Not a, hey, can you come in tomorrow? Something happened today. We can meet with you tomorrow. I was in DC 3 days. You know, I've never received a phone call from that man.
No, it doesn't surprise me.
Little book, everything. And I've actually got the opportunity to go to DC again at the end of this month, April the 28th. There is a National Cannabis Policy Summit being held in Washington, D.C. And there is a group of us Oklahomans that are trying to get together to be able to at least send, 2 or 3 people out there. So if anyone wants to donate or sponsor for me to get out to DC for this, I would greatly appreciate it. I have the GoFundMe link in the comments here on the YouTube, or you can reach out to me directly if you'd like to donate to help me get out there, because I would love to go. And for a second time, I would love to schedule another meeting, not only with Langford's office, but with Mullen's office. When I did meet with Langford's office last time, it was a staffer, but that was okay. I expected it out of their office. They had said that in the beginning. But it would be nice to be able to get out there because, as you well know, Jed, we've tested medical marijuana, we've tested hemp, we've tested soil and water, we've tested tobacco. We're testing a lot of things. And when we went out there before, as soon as you said the word marijuana to either of their offices, it was they don't deal with that because that's a federally illegal issue. So they weren't even willing to hear that there were contaminants in the products or anything else because it was federally illegal.
And if they would have not discriminated, they probably would have wanted to hear what you had to say.
Absolutely, I would think so.
And credit to Senator Burns for at least listening to what you had to say. And then, oh, okay. I didn't just automatically discriminate against this person, and they had information that I'm interested in. Who'd have thought? Who'd have thought? Yeah. And any success that I've ever had in dealing with the federal delegation was literally me being a creepy political op and knowing all their schedules and then just basically pulling up on them at the gas station and being like, "What up? Oh, it's me. Yeah, we're gonna have to chat here for a minute."
Did you take your coffee hot? No.
That's what, and I mean, it's annoying, but I mean, it's whatever. This is Oklahoma. There's no separation out here, guys.
Nah. If your favorite place to go to have dinner on Friday nights is XYZ, I'm gonna eat there too.
Yes, Heather, they are our federal representatives. Yes,
yes,
ma'am, they
are. Yes,
they get it too. They get it too. In Oklahoma, they all get it from us. And here's the thing: if they knew how to act right, we wouldn't have to run state questions. Thank God that the first power reserved by the people in our Constitution is our power to petition. So, one would think they'd get it by now. Instead, they just hate on the process, but that's a whole nother story.
All right, so Brandy says, how can all stakeholders reshape the narrative and reduce stigma? Our industry needs a serious positive PR campaign with State Question 837, especially considering all of the bad actors and press. I agree.
Absolutely 100%, Brandy, and we are working on that. We've already been getting the earned media back up and going. Long and the short, yes, there is now a concerted effort to maintain an operation that does that through whenever the end of a yes campaign is, whenever that election day is. And what we've got to do here in Oklahoma is get it together on getting this state question through, and then all again looking, whoever is we've got with us that's left here in the state after the Hunger Games are over. We have to look at what we do to maintain that in the future. I mean, I've got all the receipts. Well, I could release a 90-minute documentary on how the state screwed this up and how, they are always talking about, Chinese Communist Party grows in here. We've had a bunch of them. Okay. Guess what? It was the governor's friends who brought them here and charged them $67.5 a license.
Yeah,
there is a whole untold story that the establishment does not want us to go hammer on, but we're about to go and talk about it because a lot of the bad shit that's happened here is on them, not on us. And it's not for a lack of us trying or telling them what was going to happen. I stood there a week after we passed. Oh, I'll get going. But yeah, we're going to get them on a PR campaign. We're about to whoop them.
Well,
I'll just put it
we
to you
need
that way
to do
here.
that. It needs to be that 90-minute tell all, truth all, because
I've got it.
we don't,
It's
we
coming.
can't make changes if we've still got the wool over our eyes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, it's here's the thing. It takes a lot of dollars to push a
mhm.
campaign like what's being suggested here. And we are headlong into working on raising those dollars, and we expect that we're going to see a lot of support for this. But yeah, we're absolutely going to, it's kind of like this. It's going to be a marathon, not a sprint. Anything good, especially with PR, we've got a whole backlog of propaganda and psyops that have been run against us. So we've got to undo that. So, we're going to get started on it, and it's, I'm committed to it now as I ever was. So we'll see what goes down. Let's do it.
What was that one that Heather just had up there? It says, while we are live, can everyone please go say no to Senate Bill 1102? I don't know what that one is, so I'm not going to say no yet. It says it's a total ban on flavored vapes, juice, and tobacco products. I know it isn't cannabis, but if you vape, it could be going away as of September 1 of this year. So we are actually, as Patients for Safe Access, we are getting ready to start testing some of those vapes, the nicotine vapes. And so we're going to be testing a Raz one and a Geek Bar one. And I was recently told there's actually a list of approved vape products on, I think it's Department of Ag's website. I'm going to look for that list because I haven't found it yet. But I was also told that the majority of the products that are sold in our state in that salt nicotine category, vape boxes, are not on the list. So guys, check into that. Make sure what you're consuming. So that's what I'll say on that one. Let me ask you real quick before we try to round things up, a couple questions about the hemp stuff as well. So will the hemp products require a full panel testing as well in order to be sold through the dispensaries, through the rec or medical program? It'd have to be through rec, but yeah, you know what I mean.
Yes.
Out-of-state companies that have to test it.
So like out-of-state companies like Koi CBD, Half Baked, other companies like that are currently either sold at a distribution center like 7-Star, Zion, or C-Store. Those products would require a full panel test done here in state, or would a full panel test from their home state be sufficient?
The legislature, if it's, well, first of all, if it's THC product, then it shouldn't be coming into the state.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Right. So, but any under the law that we proposed here, the baseline is that any THC product must be sold through a licensed marijuana dispensary to the general public. That being done, any products that are sold in there that have THC are required to have a full panel testing.
Even
now,
if it's like 0.3.
right. So if it came as full panel showing THC from another state,
mm-hmm.
then well, I mean, and they inputted that into metric, they would have basically created a record of them conducting illegal activity.
Okay.
Until federal legalization or some movement allows for import or export of THC.
Mm-hmm. Brandy has put up a link up here, and it says, go here and oppose, send her link for its bill. The cannabisindustry.org, government affairs. And so if you want to take a look at that link, check that out. That'd be great. We have a couple more
comments.
Thank you, Brandy. Absolutely. A couple more comments here.
Oh man, that looks like it's our last one, man.
That is our last one, man.
Good thing we can scrape the pipe, bro. Never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Gee! Morning had to scrape my pipe. Knew that when I went to bed last night. Had a premonition in my head that I never gonna wake bankrupt again. Jumped on my bike and pedaled downtown on the lookout for the one John Brown. Found him in a corner parking lot, smoking spliffs. Him said, "Here, man, you want to take a heat?" I said, "I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again. Never gonna be bankrupt again." Went back home to put the seeds in the soil. Compost recipe from brethren I know. Water pH to 6.1. Jah in control of the ebb and flow. Planting seeds, putting flowers in my hand so that I will never awake bankrupt again. I said I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 gonna be bankrupt again. Always bring a flower to my friends. Always connecting to the music of medicine. Always finding ways to sin. Positivity and healing vibes. Always attracting my tribe. Always vulnerable to the tides. Always accountable for my strides. Holding on, not folding beyond. Letting go and letting you know. Bankrupt isn't never gonna be a part of my flow. I said I'm never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Driving around, I see John Brown and said, dead man, him said, him never gonna be bankrupt again. I said, hey John Brown, can I give you a hand so that you yourself will never be bankrupt again? I said, never gonna be bankrupt again. 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 Wow!
Stepping up strong with a righteous plea. Summer Parker fighting for you and me. Patients need what the doctor has said. Safe access now to the meds they've read. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. The struggle is real, so is the fire for health and hope. We climb higher, stand with the ones who can't stand alone. For every voice deserves a throne. Compassion leads where the laws resist. A healer's heart can't coexist with barriers blocking what we deserve. The people's needs must must be preserved. One love, one fight, don't you delay. Rights for the people in every way. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. Safe access is the anthem sound. Summer's voice, it carries the flame for justice. Chant her name again. We stand tall, we won't back down. Safe access is the anthem sound. For the people's care, we